Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Stevens, and I'm going to read you a poem. The poem is La Belle Dame sans Merci by John Keats. And as you probably know, if you know my teaching at all, I really believe in reading poems out loud, hearing poems. Hearing a poem is the best way to understand it, and perhaps this might make even more sense to you if I pointed out that poetry is one of the oldest forms of literature, and our very earliest poems, things that we think of as poems today, our very earliest ones going back more than 3,000 years, more longer than that, our very earliest poems were songs. They were recited, or if you will, sung to music, and so they were meant to be heard out loud, the way songs are today. Keep that in mind as I read La Belle Dame sans Merci. I think that hearing it might help you understand it even more fully than simply reading it on the page. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long. For sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew. And sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore. And there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses 4. And there she lulled me to sleep, and there I dreamed, ah, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamt. On the cold hillside I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La Belle Dame sans Merci hath thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide. And I awoke, and found me here, on the cold hill's side. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering. Though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. La Belle Dame sans Merci by John Keats. Let's go over a few things here. All right. I'm not going to try to interpret this poem for you. I just want to point out, basically want to cover 2 things. Number 1 is the overall structure of the poem, And number two, just a few words that are kind of strange, right? Okay. Structure of the poem. Total of 12 stanzas. And by the way, this is in ballad meter. I'm not going to go into that right now, but ballad, this is a ballad, and it's written in ballad meter, in ballad stanzas. Okay, 12 stanzas. 3 are spoken by an individual who is otherwise unidentified, except that he is apparently somewhere on this hillside looking at this night. All right? And he speaks to the night. We're going to call him speaker number 1. All right? The first speaker. He speaks to the night, and he's asking him a question. And the question is a very simple one, and it is, why are you lingering here, hanging out? All right? Why are you hanging out here looking so pale and so sickly? All right? What's wrong with you? Why are you here, and what's wrong with you? It's a simple question. Now, the question is framed in terms of the location, the time of year, and so on. All of those details are important. But the overall pattern here, or the structure, is we begin with a speaker who is talking to somebody who is identified as Knight-at-Arms, and he asks him a question, and he takes 3 stanzas to ask that question. And the question is basically, what are you doing here, and why do you look so sick? All right. Then we have the rest of the poem. And the rest of the poem, stanzas 4 through 12, comprise the knight's answer. He is answering the question. This is why I am lingering here. This is why I look the way I do, pale and haggard and sickly and so on. All right? And what form does the answer take? It's very simple. The answer takes the form of a story. And it is the story of his encounter with this lady, all right, whom is ultimately identified. He doesn't know who she is at first, but the men, and in the tale, in the dream rather, the men in the dream identify her as La Belle Dame sans Merci. French, it means the beautiful lady without pity or without mercy. That's who she is. Now, so his answer to why do you look so sick is basically, I met this lady and this is what happened. And then he tells the story. Now, the story he tells obviously is in the past. This is something that has already happened before he encounters speaker number 1, all right, or before speaker number 1 encounters him. This is something that has already happened. And so he tells the story about how he met this lady in the meads, all right, one of the strange words, in the meadows, in the fields, all right. Not a complicated concept, even though it's a strange word. All right, so the story is about how he met this lady in the fields, how they rode together. He put her on his horse. They rode together. They went to her place, all right, and then something happened at her place, and it's important. The details are important. She lulled him asleep. All right. Well, wait. I suppose we should point out before that, she took him to her place. She wept. She sighed. He shut her eyes with 4 kisses. All right. Details of action. She wept. She sighed. He shut her eyes with kisses. She lulled him to sleep. He dreamed a dream, and then he woke up on this hillside. All right? And that's why he sojourns here. All right? The here, we don't really know whether the here is actually that particular hillside on which he woke up, or whether maybe he rode on and came to the place where he encounters that first speaker. We're not exactly sure, right? But that's what happens. And you need, in order to unpack this poem and begin to interpret it, you need at least to know that overall structure. All right? Question and answer. Answer in terms of the story of what happened to the knight when he encountered La Belle Dame sans Merci. Let's look at a few words. All right? Okay, we are stanza 1. Sedge has withered from the lake. That's the vegetation that grows around a lake. Oh, let's see, stanza 2. The squirrel's granary is full. That's an important detail. Squirrels gather nuts. A granary is a place where you store grain. Well, so the squirrel's granary is the place where he stores nuts for the winter. All right, and that's one of the things that squirrels are famous for. They squirrel away those nuts so that they have something to eat during the cold weather. Let's see. We've already talked in stanza 4 about the meaning of needs. And stanza 5, I made a garland for her head and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. Oh, okay, what's a zone? All right, we're not talking about time zones here, right? Or we're not talking about zoning laws, zones where people live, residential zone, right? Commercial zone, that sort of thing. A zone in this case is a belt or a sash that a woman would wear around her waist. Okay, we don't use that word anymore, but you understand the concept of something pretty, something beautiful that a woman would wear around her waist. And the knight has made these things for her. He's made her some bracelets. He's made her this belt to go around her. And probably since he's out there in the fields, he very well may have made these from flowers. Oh, the pacing steed. Pacing steed would be the knight's horse, right? She found me roots of relish sweet. Relish, simply something that tastes good. Okay? It's not necessarily the chopped pickle stuff that you put on your hot dog, all right? But anything that adds flavor to something. And, okay, stanza 8, she took me to her elfin grot. A grot or a grotto is a cave. Important detail. All right, this lady lives in an enclosed and probably dark space, perhaps. All right. And, okay, and the dream, La Belle Dame sans Merci, hath thee in thrall, and so on. I think I've covered most of the strange words in the poem. And so that's it. As I say, that's a reading, because I think in hearing something read, you understand it better. A few details about the structure of the poem, and then a few explanations of some of the stranger words. I hope that helps. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in discussion.